Hello and welcome to my channel, The Curious Coder. This video is part of my Java Core interview series where I break down the most commonly asked Java interview questions. So today's topic is what's the difference between final, finally and finalize. Now they sound similar but they are completely different in how they work. Okay, final is a keyword, finally is a block and finalize is a method. Alright, now because their names are so similar, interviewers love asking this question just to play on the confusion. Okay, but once you know the real difference, it's very easy to get it right. So in this video, I'll break each one of them with full hands-on examples. I'll show you where and how they are used, and I'll make sure you never mix them up again. Alright, so let's get started. So first let's see how final works on a field. Okay, we have this class employee. It has three fields: ID, the name of the employee, and the company in which the employee is working. Okay, and we have this print employee info method in which it prints all the fields one by one. Okay, so let's say we take this field company as a final field. So what I'll do is I'll just add the keyword final and this will make this field as final. Alright, so you can see that we get an error that says field company might not have been initialized. Alright, so the first thing that you must know about final is that a final field must be initialized. Okay, you cannot leave it blank like this. Okay, you have to give some initial value to this field. So for now I'll give the value as, let's say the company is Google. Okay, so now we don't have this compilation issue. And another thing that I want you to know is that the correct syntax is that first you write the final keyword, then you give the data type. Alright, so if you'll write it like this, okay, then this won't work because it's not the correct syntax. Alright, so I'll just make it again final like this, and we have initialized this field with this value Google. Okay, now let me create an object of this class. Let's say employee e1 is equal to new employee, and I'll just define some values to this object. So let's say the ID is 1 and the name is, we'll take some name Rohit. Okay, now if I try to set the value for company, e1.company is equal to, for example, I change it to Deloitte. So you'll observe that we get some error. Okay, it says that cannot assign a value to final variable company. Try to make employee.company not final. Okay, so what this error says is that since we have already given a value to this field company and it's a final field, so it means that we cannot change the value of the field now. Okay, that is what final do. It does not allow you to change the value of a field. Okay, so that is why you cannot specifically set the value of company as Deloitte here because we already have it as Google. Okay, so I'll just remove this and I'll call the method even.printEmployeeInfo. Okay, now I'll run it. Great. So you can see the ID is printed, name is printed, and the company name is Google. Okay, now there is another way of initializing the field. You can give the value directly right here, or you can use a constructor. Okay, so let's say I create a constructor like this, and instead of giving the value here, I'll just say company is equal to Google. Okay, so right now it will give error because we have already initialized it and we are trying to change the value here again. Okay, but if I remove it from here, then it will be fine. Okay, if I run it again, so again you will see that the employee's ID is 1, name is Rohit, and the company name is Google. Okay, now let's do one thing. I'll create one more employee. Employee E2 is equal to new employee, and let's say its ID is 2 and the name is something, let's say Shekhar. And what if I try to change the value of company now? Okay, let's say he works in Amazon, but again this is not allowing me to change the value because again company is a final field and we cannot change the value of a final field. Okay, we have initialized it once and that is why I cannot change its value here. Okay, but do you see the problem here? We have two different employees and it's possible that they might be working in two different companies. Okay, so I have to somehow give a logic where I can change this value, right? So instead of initializing it like this in constructor, what I'll do is I need some kind of dynamic initialization so that I can have different values for different objects, right? So for that, what I'll do, I'll take it as an input string company, and instead of hard coding it here, what I'll do is I'll just take this company, this dot company is equal to company. Okay, I'll just explain what I'm doing. So basically, whenever we'll create the object of employee, we'll pass a company in this argument, and whatever we pass here, that will be set to this field. Okay, this field here, this will be equal to whatever we pass in the local parameter. Okay, so whenever we are creating the object now, here I can pass it as Google, let's say, and for the employee E2, I can pass it as Amazon, right? And I'll just call e2 dot print employee info. Now if I run the project, great. So you can see that both the employees information is printed. So for the first employee, we have the company as Google, and for the second employee, we have the company as Amazon. Okay, so this is how final actually works. It does not mean that we can only have one value for this field. Final actually means that we can have one value for one particular object. Okay, but if I try to change the value now again, let's say for E2, I try to change the value of company and set it to something else. Now let's say to Deloitte. So this won't work. Okay, because the field is final. So for an object, the value is defined at the start when you try to create that object. That can't be changed because the field is final. But yes, you can have two different values for two different employees. And let's say if there are more employees, then you can have different values for all the employees. Okay, for all the objects. So this is how final works. I'll just remove this. Okay, so this is how it works on a field. Now let's see how it works on a method. Okay, so I'll just remove it from here. All right, let's say we have a method public void greet. Okay, and there is a simple print statement in this that says hello, I am an employee. Okay, it's a simple method. Now I'll create one more class, a Java class, that is, let's say the class is intern. Okay, and this class extends the employee class. Okay, so there is no constructor available in employee. Okay, so actually we need a constructor here. I'll just create one simple constructor with all the fields. All right, and I'll also create a constructor with no fields. Okay, so we have these constructors and we have this method greet. Okay, now in this class, in this intern class, we are extending the employee, and let's say I give my own implementation for this greet method here. Okay, I'm doing the method overriding. So we are calling this same method greet, we are overriding the same method, and for an intern, the print statement says system.out.println hello, I am an intern. Okay, similarly we have one more class, let's say manager. This also extends employee, and here as well I give another implementation for greet, and here we say system.out.println hello, I am a manager. Okay, so in the parent class employee, we have this greet method that says hello, I am an employee, and we have two child classes of it, intern and manager, where we have two different implementations. Okay, here we are saying I am an intern, and in manager we are saying I am a manager. Okay, so in the employee class, in the main class, what I'll do, I'll just I'll remove all this. I'll just create simple objects. Okay, employee e1 is equal to new employee, and we just call e1 dot greet. Similarly, we have intern intern is equal to new intern. Okay, and I call intern dot greet, and similarly we create an object of manager. Manager is equal to new manager. Okay, and I call manager dot greet. Alright, so if I'll run this code now, you'll see we get all the three statements printed. Okay, but now let's say this method greet, this was a final method. Okay, so how will I make it final? I'll just add a keyword here. So now this method is final, and again I want to show you the syntax. We have to add final here before the return type. We cannot add it like this. Okay, this will give error. Alright, so the correct syntax is that we have the return type, and before writing the return type we have to write final. Okay, so I have made this method final now, and you will see that when we try to override it, we are getting an error that says greet cannot override greet in employee because overridden method is final. Okay, similarly in this class as well, in intern class also, you can see that it cannot override this method. Okay, so this is what final does when we add it against a method. So it will not allow that method to be overridden. Okay, so whenever a class is extended and in the child class we try to give some new implementation of some method, then you cannot do it if that method is final. Okay, so this is how this is how final works on a method level. Okay, but still you can extend this class. Okay, there is no issue in that, and you can try to override other methods. Okay, like we have this method, so this one you can override because it's not final. Or if there have been other methods in this class, then that you could have overridden. Okay, but let's say I'll just remove final from here. Let's say I make this whole class as final. Okay, like this. So now what will happen is that now you can't even extend the class. Okay, it says cannot inherit from final class employee. Okay, similarly here as well it will say that cannot inherit from final class employee. Okay, so when we use final on a class level, it will not allow a child of that class. Okay, now this employee class can't be inherited. There cannot be any child of this class. Okay, so this is how final works at three levels. First on the field level, then the method level, and then the class level. Okay, now let's look into finally. Finally is a block that is used along with try catch. Try catch is something that is used for exception handling, and finally is the block that always gets executed. Okay, so let me explain this via an example. So we have taken this class maths, which has this method divide, whose purpose is to divide a and b. Okay, and return the value. So we start with a variable answer and initialize it to -1, and here we are performing the division and storing the value in this answer variable. Okay, so since we are performing some arithmetic operation, that is why, to be on the safer side, I have kept this logic inside a try catch block. Okay, so if any exception comes here in this logic, then that exception will be caught and we'll just print the exception and then we'll return the answer. And if there is no exception, then it will simply come here to line number 12 and it will return the answer. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll create an object of maths, and I'll simply call the divide method. Okay, so we'll divide 4 by 2, and whatever we get as the result, we'll just print it. Okay, system.out.println result. Alright, great. So 4 by 2 we get 2. Okay, but what if I take 0 instead of 2? So now we are dividing a number by 0 and we'll definitely get some exception. Okay, so in this case, if I run my project, you will see that first the exception is printed, which says dash by 0. Okay, so what would have happened is that it came here and there was an exception, so it went to the catch block. First this exception was printed, which is this slash by 0, and since the division did not take place properly, so the initial value of answer, basically the value of answer so far before this line number 6, this was returned, okay, which is -1. So that is why we got when we printed the result, it was -1. Okay, so where does finally fit here? Okay, now finally is a block which we can add in the end like this. Okay, and this is the block that always gets executed. Okay, so by always, what I mean is that whether or not an exception will be there, this block will get executed. Okay, so you saw that catch was only executed when there was an exception. Okay, this exception was not printed. We didn't come to this line number 8 when there was no exception. Okay, when we did the division of 4 and 2. But when there was an error, this catch block got executed. But finally is a block that always gets executed whether or not there is an exception. Okay, so I'll just show you. Let's say we add a print statement that we want to be printed anyways if there is an exception or if there is no exception. Okay, so let's say I just add a simple print statement that says division method completed. Okay, so this I want it to be printed always whether or not there is any exception. Alright, so what I'll do, as of now we are sending an error case, and you'll see that when I run this, so first the exception is printed. Okay, this exception message is printed, but before returning from here, this finally block was executed and this division method completed statement was printed. Alright, then it returned from here, and whatever was returned, which was -1, that got printed. Okay, and now let's say if it is not an exception case, then if I run, so then also you will see that this block got executed and this statement was printed, and then the result was printed. Okay, now you can argue that why do we need a finally block for that? Okay, we could have just simply written it like this. Instead of having a finally block, I could have added it here. Let's say we don't have it. I'll just comment this block. Okay, so instead of this finally block, I could have just given a print statement here, and it should have also worked. Okay, so let's just see. Alright, I'll run this, and yes, this gets printed because we came here, answer was 2, and it didn't go into the catch block because there was no exception. So then it came to line number 14, this was printed, and we returned 2. Okay, but let's say there is an error scenario and we divide it by 0. Okay, now if I run, great. So you will see that in this case, the exception was printed and then the result was printed. But this statement was not printed. This is because as soon as we got an exception, it went to the catch block, and in the catch block, it just simply returned from here. Okay, first the exception was printed and then it simply returned from here. It didn't reach this statement. Okay, so that is why we need a finally block whenever we want something to be executed, whether or not exception is there. Okay, so that is why we have this, and generally it's used for some logic where either we want to print something which we definitely want to print, or maybe for some cleanup logic. Okay, we have some objects that we have created and we want to close those objects, we want to make those objects null. Okay, we have some file that we have opened and we want to close that file. Okay, these kind of logics are generally added in the finally block. Alright, so you can see that finally and final are quite different. Okay, their name is same, but their name is quite similar, but altogether they are totally different things. One is used somewhere in exception handling and other is used just to give a final value or to restrict something from being overridden or from being inherited. Okay, now let's understand finalize. Finalize is a method which is called at the time of garbage collection. Now what is garbage collection? Basically it is a process in which JVM frees up the memory. Okay, so what it does is it deletes all the objects that are unreferenced. Basically they don't have any reference variable pointing towards them, so they are just sitting in the memory, and JVM cleans up all those objects, okay, just to free up the memory. So before performing this garbage collection, finalize method is called by JVM. Alright, this is the basic definition of finalize. So let's see in the code base. So what I've done here is I have created a string object whose value is hello, and this object is being referenced by this variable s. So basically s is a reference variable That is, it's pointing towards this object in the memory. Okay, so hello is there somewhere in the memory and S is pointing towards it. Okay, now here I make S as null. Alright, so this means that hello is still there in the memory, but there is no reference variable to it. Okay, basically no one is pointing towards it. Alright, it's just sitting there in the memory. So what JVM does is that for these objects which have no reference variables, which are not referenced by any pointer, what they do is they just clean up those objects. Okay, and that process is called garbage collection. Alright, so JVM performs that process, but if you want to trigger it, you can just call system.gc. Okay, GC stands for garbage collection. And whenever that garbage collection takes place, this method gets called. Okay, finalize method. And one thing you need to note about this method is that this method is part of object class. Okay, object is the parent class of all the classes in Java, and this finalize method belongs to that. And actually after Java 8 it has been deprecated. Okay, we don't use this method now. Basically JVM does not always use this method. Okay, it does not prioritize it basically, so I won't be able to show you how it actually works, but the logic was this only, that we needed to perform a garbage collection because there were some unreferenced object, and whenever garbage collection used to take place, at that point finalize used to get called. Okay, and you could add some logic in finalize. So let's say I wanted to print something like this: garbage collection taking place. Okay, so something like this would have been printed if the garbage collection took place. So finalize would have been called and this was basically printed. So this is what finalize do. So in the interview you must tell these 2 points. First, that this belongs to parent class and this gets triggered whenever garbage collection takes place. And since Java 9 it has been deprecated, so it does not get used that much. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between final, finalize and finally. These three are very similar looking things, but actually their purpose is totally different. Okay.